Here to discuss IoT in the boardroom is ZDNet's editor-in-chief and TechRepublic editorial director, Larry Dignan. Larry, what's going on with IoT? We're expecting 50 billion devices in the market in the next 5 years. This will be transformative. Whether we know what that transformation looks like or not is still to be determined. But what's going on in the boardroom with IoT?
Yeah, I think everybody's trying to get their hands around IoT, so it's worth putting together a quick primer at a high level and just sort of, break it down, so to speak. So I think the main thing to know here is IoT, like you said, it's millions and millions of sensors out there, and that number, the 50 million number you threw out there, that'll probably double like 2 years after that, right? So basically, the movement with IoT is you're just putting sensors on everything. Every device. It could be devices, it could be things, it could be tractors, it could be any damn thing you could think of. And the big takeaway and why it's a boardroom issue is because it's going to transform your whole business, right? So the whole digital transformation talk, it's a nice catch-all phrase just to talk about the convergence of various things, such as big data, IoT, things like that. So IoT to me is probably the most important component part of the whole digital transformation talk, because it is going to just totally change how you track inventory, how you track your supply chain. It's going to give you a lot more analytical data. It's going to give you basically just a lot more knowledge. The other problem here is you look at it and you're going to have all these sensors basically saying, I'm here now, things are fine, here's the temperature, here's this, here's that, blah, blah, blah. And what you wind up getting is just data overload, right? So I think the big movement for IoT is really going to be managing the data and managing the streams and figuring out what's important and what's not. And I think that's the growing pains we're going to have with basically a lot of the projects that are going on now. Like what data being thrown off by that sensors, really matters. And for some things, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? You're distributing pharmaceuticals. It's got to stay a certain temperature in, the truck or whatever. And, that's your data. You can kind of find anomalies, all that. You look at a data center, you can find anomalies in all the architecture and infrastructure. That's handy stuff. For other things, I think companies are going to put a lot of sensors in things and not quite know what to do with it. Right. And I think one of the greatest test beds for this sort of stuff in the real world meets IoT, it's going to be smart cities, right? Whether it's water supplies, whether it is traffic, you can go on and on with the city stuff. And those things are really, some of it's rolled out in pieces, some of it's in, these things are in pilots. But I think that's where IoT is going to have the most transformative stuff going on in, like where it intersects with like real life. And the other problem you need to know about IoT is because storage is cheap, you can keep all this data laying around. So you might store a lot of data just from these sensors just to see what it amounts to in the future, right? Which presents another problem, right? Because you almost can't talk about IoT without talking about big data too. So it really becomes a big data management story. So I almost see them as kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing on a different continuum, really. I just think the end of that bottom line for IoT is going to make everything smart, which is a little freaky yet also kind of cool.
And data overload might make everyone dumb or paralyze everyone until there is a few solutions that can kind of put some signal to the noise there. What about IoT security with 50 billion devices, or like you said, maybe 100 billion or trillions in the market in the next few decades? That's a lot of data laying around. It's a lot of data that could be hacked and accessed and cost a lot of money in terms of security, storage security. So what about IoT security? Are there any best practices companies should engage in to protect not just devices, but the data produced by the devices?
Yeah, well, I think whatever your data protection scheme is has to flow out to IoT. The absolutely scary part is a lot of these IoT devices were shipped out without really a lot of security. And we've already seen a few attacks on that. So IoT is a boardroom issue because of, the things it can do for the business. It's also going to be a boardroom issue because security is already a boardroom issue, right? So my guess is there's probably security executives right now going, how do we lock this down? And that may be a gating factor on how fast this stuff actually gets used. As far as best practices go, I mean, a lot of it's just, you're going to need that layer of software, and you're going to have to treat like you would secure your data center. As that moves to the cloud, your infrastructure is going to have to be those devices in the field, and you're going to have to secure them. And there are multiple ways to do that. The other thing about IoT is every tech vendor on the planet is going to have some magic bullet for you, which means you will probably be buying hardware and software and IoT solutions that don't turn out to solve much of anything. So I think that's going to be the other big challenge with IoT too.